Welcome to episode 8 of the Cranky Fan podcast here on the FL Teams channel. I am your host, the Cranky Fan, and I am back from my sabbatical. This episode, as always, is sponsored by no one, no sponsors yet. Uh, Glad to be back. I've been off for a couple of weeks. I had rotator cuff surgery on my right shoulder, quite painful, 3 tears. I can now do this with my shoulder, which is a lot better than it was a couple of weeks ago. Feeling good enough that I actually went down this weekend down to Florida for 2 Tampa Bay Rays New York Yankee games, but more importantly, the season opener for the Florida Gators as they battle Utah in the beginning of the Billy Napier era. And a lot of excitement. Really glad to get down there. And let me tell you something: if you lived through COVID, in 2020, when you don't have the normal traditions and pomp and circumstance and everything about going to a Gator game, you really appreciate it when you're back. This is the first year we are 100% back. Full attendance, full tailgate, full everything. It's like it was in 2019. So just thankful that we can all get back to going up to Gainesville, being together. A lot of fun. Whole weekend was fantastic. Going to focus today on the Gator game. I might have another podcast later on in the week. We catch up with the Rays. They did their job, won 2 out of 3 against the Yankees. Probably a bad call on strike 3 at the end of the game on Sunday to prevent a possible sweep, but let's just table that for now. Let's talk about the Gators. That's why we're here. One of those things, it's the beginning. We've been waiting for basically 9 months to see what a Billy Napier team looks like on the field, and I don't think it disappointed in the least. The buzzword with Billy Napier, and we saw it when it came to recruiting, and we're going to see it with this team on the field, is patience and trust. We got to trust this guy and have patience with him. I mean, remember one thing, and I just kept going through my head the entire game. This is week 1 of the season. We're not playing a directional school. We're not playing some scrub. We're not playing, Kentucky from 10 years ago for week 1. This was Utah. And, on paper, it sounds great. Hey, we want to have these, intersectional games, these non-conference matchups. They're fun. They look great. Well, when it's time to play them, all of a sudden people start freaking out. Oh, we're not playing a directional school. We're playing a good team. And of course, just our luck, we schedule Utah when they happen to be good. It happens all the time in our SEC schedule where, Auburn rotates in and they're fantastic. Old Miss rotates in, they're good. So it never fails with us. But such is life, And to me, my philosophy always is I'd rather see good opponents than bad opponents. I mean, we pay a lot of money for season tickets. I don't need to see a certain blowout. And my philosophy always is knives sharpen knives. I'm not sure what value you're really getting by playing a scrub. Your starter's only playing half a game. And I get it. Gives you a chance for some of your backups to get some time and mop up time. But to me, I want my guys battle tested for this SEC schedule coming up, which starts, no rest for the weary, no time to celebrate. We got Kentucky coming up this week, but a very good test. Utah is a very good team. I don't want to hear from Knowles or anything or talking about, well, we're both back. Well, first of all, you're not. You beat a pretty pathetic LSU team, but this Utah team is very good. They're not elite. They're not Bama. They're not Georgia, not Ohio State, but they're very solid, coached really well, fundamentally sound, a good quarterback, really good tight end, good running game, good secondary, a team that, a very good chance they can probably run the table in the Pac-12 and possibly be in the playoff. I mean, if I was a betting person, which I am, I'd put my money on Utah being in the playoff before we are. That's for damn sure. So we were not playing Sisters of the Mercy this week. We were playing a really, really good team. And don't let anybody from the school out west try to sell you on the fact that, well, Utah was overrated. Poll will be coming out any second now. I'm looking. Oh, poll just came out. Breaking news. The Gators are 12th in this latest poll. Pretty amazing. Utah is, let's see. This is where I don't edit, so you're going to have to live with me for a little bit here. Utah. If you listen to Mike Francesa's show, you know what this is like when he just scrolls looking for things. I believe they're 14th, Utah. So there you go. Still a solid team after us. But anyway, 12th. I wasn't expecting that. I thought we'd be somewhere around 16 to 18 after that game. So a lot of respect. That's what happens when you play a good team in a, the ESPN primetime exposure marquee matchup game on Saturday night. And a lot of eyes are watching obviously because of Anthony Richardson, but there you are. We are 12th going into the Kentucky game next week. So let's talk about the game a little bit. The first thing that stood out to me, obviously, is, let's talk about Anthony Richardson. I mean, he is as advertised. He is a guy that, does things, makes things out of nothing, out of just raw ability. I mean, you saw a couple of scrambles. The 2-point conversion obviously comes to mind where that guy just the combination of quickness, speed, strength, and keeping his head up. If our seats are in the end zone, we look down and you watch his helmet. He's always looking downfield, even when he's scrambling. He's trying to make a play, and the 2-point conversion is a perfect example of that. Hitting Frazier's wide open. Only reason that play happens is he's keeping his head up, his eyes up, looking. Catches him, nails him for the 2-point conversion. But just the guy shows a lot of poise. Remember, this is his second career start. And, second time he's starting against a top 10 team. Last year, Mullen threw him to the Wolves as a kind of a, well, you guys want him? Here he is type of move from a coach that's obviously was on his way out. Give this guy now 7 months of preparation. He is the man in charge. There's no undisputed leader of this team. And he balled out. He played. Don't be worried about the passing yardage or the attempts. I think that was just, this is a very unique team we played with a unique skill set and a unique matchup. And this Billy Napier team is going to want to run the ball. They're going to want to run the ball probably 55, 60% of the time. And this front seven of Utah, inexperienced. I mean, there's some starters back, but not relatively many snaps. And they didn't prove they could stop the run. And there's no reason to put the ball up 30, 35 times. And you don't have to. So I think they played within their game plan, executed well. I was very pleased at the relatively few amount of penalties. I don't think there were any false starts or no delayed games, no procedure calls, no unsportsmanlike conducts, no unforced errors, which was a commonplace of the Mullen regime last year. Yeah, there was a hold or two, but this is week one. Again, you would see these mistakes against playing anybody, and you expect those corrections to happen in week 2 and beyond. They didn't look disorganized. People knew where they were supposed to be. Just a very good foundational start. I expect, based upon who we play going forward, the passing game to open up a little more, both in quantity and more shots downfield more. But again, for a week 1, I will certainly take it. Running game looked fantastic. This offensive line, it's as advertised. It's all healthy, which is great. But the ability to run between the tackles is something we haven't seen in a long time, and I think that just makes Anthony Richardson even more dangerous for the things he can do. It's nothing you have to think about. A big thing also that this is obviously not a Dan Mullen team anymore is the fact that a true freshman, Trevor Etienne, played not that he got a lot of carries also, but when he got those carries in crunch time. That tells you this is a meritocracy finally on this team. It's no longer my guys or, well, he's been here longer and he's earned the right to play. The best people are going to play on this team. I'll get to defense in a minute, but Shamar James playing linebacker in a critical spot in this game in the fourth quarter. That never happens last year. Also, Etienne and Johnson both fumble. Michael Johnson fumbles You think those guys would be back on the field with the load they carried after those fumbles last year with Dan Mullen? No, they'd be on the bench in the doghouse, paying for that transgression like that. But you know, I'm very encouraged by the fact that these guys, get the reps that they do, even after mistakes. That the best guys are going to play, and that's going to play untold significant dividends, later on this year and next year going forward as well. Um, Want to talk about a little bit fourth quarter play calling and just the decisions of clock management, which I thought was fantastic. I know some people were griping about using too much time. To me, the only way you were going to win this game in the fourth quarter was keeping the ball out of Utah's hands. Um, I don't know if this team necessarily was gassed in the fourth quarter. And also, I guess as we segue into defense, uh, I just felt like, Utah was able to run the ball at the end. They were able to, tight end was very effective with those crossing routes. We had no answer for it. To me, the only chance was to eat up as much time on that clock. And that meant running the play clocks down. That meant going forward on, fourth down, doing those things that, may not seem at the time like the smartest moves, but I just think it was his proper clock management. And I kudos to Billy Napier. And I just think that's part of the overall preparation of this team. This guy is a master preparer, thinks about things, was cool and calm. And that's just, again, things that just bode really well going forward in the future. On defense, I'm going to be actually cautiously optimistic. I know a lot of people are like, same old mediocre defense. This was not a Todd Grantham defense. First of all, this team didn't quit in the fourth quarter, which was a staple of a Dan Mullen team last year when, a mutiny and a coup was going on. I felt like, this team played with heart and guts the entire game. Look, this team roster wise needs an infusion of talent if they want to be considered an elite team. If they're really going to challenge Georgia for the SEC East, challenge Bama for the SEC, challenge the Ohio States for the national championship, they need more talent, and we all knew that. On defense, you could see we were razor thin defensive tackle. You could see the linebackers are thin. Safeties is still going to be an issue. Quarterbacks, were not challenged by Utah, which was good. So, but this team, there wasn't just like massive, communication breakdowns, no easy scores. They buckled down in the red zone twice, and I came away from that game as again, I'm expecting improvements and upgrades from week 1 to week 2. It happens every year for every team, no matter who they're playing, and I'm not going to come away and say this is a horrible, mediocre defense. I'm also saying this is not the steel curtain. It's a team that's going to be average on defense. I think once we, get into the season, hopefully injuries aren't a problem. This team, whether it's going to win 6 games or win 10 games, is going to do so because of the offense. How far will Anthony C. Richardson take this offense? How healthy will this offensive line stay throughout the year? How healthy will this defensive line stay throughout the year? We start suffering a rash of injuries like we have, it could be a long, long season. But the third thing I wanted to bring up really quickly was special teams. I think that was the one point I was pretty disappointed on. We got to figure out who's going to be our kick returner. We had some pretty, couple of holding calls on kickoffs, which can't happen. I mean, our starting field position was not very good in this game, and a lot of that was self-inflicted. I thought that was the only part of this team where I felt it looked a little shaky and not prepared. And, you can have new coaches come in and instill discipline, but sometimes it's tough to teach old dogs new tricks. And I think until this roster ultimately gets flushed out of the Dan Mullen guys and the Billy Napier recruits come in, from the class of 2022 next year and going forward, I think you will see bad habits going away off this roster and things will improve, and especially with special teams. So, that was it. That last, they're driving Kentucky and you're thinking, okay, overtime possibilities, keep them out of the end zone. The last thing you expect is a pick. And Amani Burney, who's been much maligned, was in the right place at the right time. makes the biggest play of his life. And instead of worrying about overtime or what ifs, we have a W. We win it. We beat a top 10 team, and we suddenly go into Kentucky with a lot more confidence than we might have after a close loss or maybe even getting blown out by a really good team. So you really can't ask for anything more. 0 injuries out of that game. Saw the report last night. 0 suspensions expected next week for an SEC game, unlike Kentucky, which has got a lot of problems with running back. I think their top 3 running backs will be out. But if we play like we do, I said it in the beginning of the season. I thought there was a bunch of coin flip games this season. I thought Utah. I thought Kentucky. I thought Tennessee. I thought those are all games. LSU, I thought were coin flip games. They can go either way. I think if we can play like we did on Saturday and build upon what we did, stay healthy, those coin flip games may start to weight a little more in our favor as possible ones. I mean, LSU, Jesus Christ, that team's a disaster. They made, Florida State, the fact that even Florida State even was lucky to win that game, I didn't even consider that a win for Florida State. I just consider that they're just happy they weren't embarrassed in what could potentially be one of the worst chokes of the last 20 years. But that LSU team is a mess. They lost one of their defensive linemen out for the year with surgery in that game. I mean, of course, LSU Florida is a crazy series and crazier things have happened, but you got to feel good going into that game. So suddenly, a season where you thought, 6, 7 wins now could be trending towards 7 or 8 or possibly 9 if things go the right way. And now you're talking about, maybe not embarrassing yourself against Georgia, maybe competing with A&M, maybe hoping for a New Year's Day bowl bid. Sugar Bowl is December 31st. That would not be a bad consolation prize for this team in year one of the Billy Napier era. So overall, very pleased with obviously with the outcome, pleased with what I saw on the field. Happy to be back in Gainesville. Look forward to flying down again next weekend for the Kentucky game, another 7:00 game. That one's a lot more important than this one. We're talking about an SEC East opponent. If you want to make it so this season, if you play Georgia, you have a shot to win the division if you play them and beat them. And again, long way to go to consider them, but you want to put yourself in position, and we've done that so far. So very happy here. That's it. That's all I basically wanted to say. Just a little quick hitter here about my reaction to the game. Might have another one later on this week. I'll talk some Rays, as we get through this Boston series this week and think about my thoughts about the upcoming Kentucky game. But until then, you can catch this show and all other shows on the FL Teams YouTube channel. And by the way, this is to my fellow peeps over at FL Teams. I'm not sure who had that tweet last week that said if ranking the top Florida quarterbacks and had Anthony Richardson second behind USF's quarterback. You may want to reevaluate that. And if you'd like to debate that, and if you still feel the same way, you have an open invitation. I don't know who it was out there who did it, but I'd certainly love to talk about that one because I kind of disagree just a little bit. So check out the FL Teams YouTube channel for all the other great shows that are on there. If you care about the New York Giants, the Just Giants podcast with myself and the Football Grump is on YouTube and all the other podcast platforms that are out there. The season starts this weekend. Giants play Tennessee, 4:25 on Sunday. I'll be talking about that, of course. You could catch me, as always, on Twitter at the Cranky Fan. I'm always talking Gators, Rays, Giants, New York City FC as our season falls apart. Tottenham Hotspur, off to a great start with them. Eastlake football, big win last week. You name it, I'm talking about it. So catch me on Twitter there at the Cranky Fan. And thanks as always for watching this show. I really appreciate it. I'll be on a little more often as my wing gets better. And we'll talk to you soon. So until then, go Gators, go Rays, go all my teams.